One Zambia, One Nation, and welcome to Zanis News. We look at the top stories in the news tonight. Zambia celebrates Africa Freedom Day. 10 industrial milling plants are to be installed in Zambia. Mwansabombwe DC calls for completion of Civic Center. Plus, filmmakers appeal for support. President Hakainde Hichilema has recognized 2 people from Eastern Province for their contributions in the agriculture sector. The head of state conferred Chief Katumba of Sinda District with the president's insignia for meritorious achievements for his consistency in the agriculture sector by growing different crops, including maize all year round through irrigation. The president has also honored Katete youth Henry Moyo for taking up his late father's 111 hectares of farmland and keeping it afloat. And during the investiture ceremony at State House in Lusaka, marking Africa Freedom Day, President Hichilema noted that the activities of the two are in line with government's policy on agriculture by promoting irrigation so as to guarantee food security in the country. More in this report.
President Hakainde Hichilema, accompanied by First Lady Mtinta Hichilema, arriving at State House to lead Zambians in the commemorations of the Africa Freedom Day. The theme for this year's commemorations is Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st century, building resilient education systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality and relevant learning in Africa. Here, the president presided over the investiture ceremony where he honored various Zambians for their positive contributions to Zambia. Among those honored included Chief Katumba of Sinda District in the Eastern Province and the Katete youth Henry Moyo were both conferred with the president's insignia for meritorious achievement for their positive involvement in the agriculture sector. The president said the activities of the two are in line with the government's policy on agriculture by promoting irrigation so as to guarantee food security of the country.
The government's policy of agriculture by promoting vertical irrigation and making a sound contribution to food security of the district throughout the year. The contribution to the country's food basket and to the uplifting of the chieftain is indeed worthy of special commendation.
The president also conferred Professor Elwin Chomba and Father Michael Walsh with the Order of the Eagle of Zambia 3rd Division for their positive impact made to the Zambian community. The president's insignia for Mercy was conferred on Tobias Kandanda, while the president's Medal for Gallantry was conferred on Samuel Ernest. Later, the president led the vice president and the first lady in the cutting of the African cake before distributing some pieces to others.
This is my cutting, Western Province.
For those who are here live and present, we may not
One Zambia,
One Nation.
One Zambia,
One Nation.
The event was also spiced by various performances by artists and traditional groups drawn from across Zambia. Africa Freedom Day recites the annual commemorations of Africa's independence, freedom, and liberation struggles from colonial imperialists. Happy Africa Freedom Day, Mother Zambia. Kala Shima reporting for Zanis in Osaka.
And our President Hakainde Hichilema earlier today led government official members of the diplomatic corps and church and other cooperating partners in a wreath-laying ceremony to commemorate this year's Africa Freedom Day. The event was held at the Freedom Statue in Lusaka. Wupe Sendwe covered the event and now reports.
May 25th of each year, nations on the African continent remember and celebrate the Africa Freedom Day in honor of the long struggle for liberation that shaped Africa. This year, Zambia is, however, holding the official national activities today on May 24, 2024 to commemorate the day. To begin the celebrations, a wreath-laying ceremony was held at the Freedom Statue in Lusaka, where President Hakainde Hichilema led activities. Giving homily, Zambia Police Service Head of Chaplaincy commended President Hichilema for successfully implementing the free education policy that speaks to this year's Africa Freedom Day commemoration theme.
To this end, Mr. President, I wish to congratulate you and your government for the bold step that you took on the free education policy upon assuming office. This push, Mr. President, sits well with the Africa agenda and this year's theme, which says Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st century. The initiative to educate and skill Africa is a clarion call for all to get the necessary skills that would be key to succeed in the new world.
Former Vice President Nevas Mumba stated that Africa will only be free if countries take charge of their natural resources.
But I think all of us must realize that Africa's freedom depends on, first of all, educating our masses and our citizens to believe in themselves and to know that until we start to govern ourselves in reality, this freedom we talk about remains as a dream. All that I'm saying is that we have to come to a place where we sit down as a people in Zambia, do an audit of our resources and take charge of all of our resources ourselves.
A renowned freedom fighter, Mama Betty Chilonga, urged young people to build on the achievements of their forefathers.
To maintain the peace, guard the peace, maintain the unity as well. Because without peace and the unity, we will not progress as a nation. It's the same unity and peace that we talk about, which helped us to pull through. Otherwise, we are not going to defeat the enemies of this country.
And in attendance were the diplomatic missions in Zambia, who pledged continued support to the country amid climate challenges.
In spite of all these difficulties, we would like to mention droughts and cholera and corona. All these difficulties facing the government, the New Dawn government, but I am sure that the government will overcome all these difficulties and will go forward with its program as promised to the people of Zambia. And of course, it has the support from all of us.
Wupe Sendwe for Zanis in Lusaka.
Thank you so much for that report. Now, Zambia and the entire African continent commemorated Africa Freedom Day. Various stakeholders have underscored the importance of fostering peace and unity in a bid to achieve economic development. And Chief Kambo of the Lamba people, who is also chairperson of the House of Chiefs, says peace and unity is key towards spearheading social and economic development. Sunday Walia reports that Chief Nkamba was speaking on the sidelines of the commemorations at State House today.
Peace and unity are a cornerstone of social and economic development and should be guarded jealously. Zambia today joined the rest of the African continent in commemorating Africa Freedom Day. The event, which took place at State House, had various stakeholders that voiced their concerns on the importance of celebrating the day. Chief Nkamba of the Lamba people of Copper Belt and chairperson of the House of Chiefs reaffirmed the importance of peace and unity as the country celebrates Africa Freedom Day.
We talk of freedom. The words that automatically come to our minds words like peace, unity, we can't separate those. And when we look at freedom in the context of Zambia, how we gained our independence, our founding fathers of this nation, the late Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, first president of the Republic of Zambia, and his colleagues before they gained our independence. Those people were united. Kenneth Kaunda, Mwangahari Nkumbura, Kapwepwe, and all those. What brought them together was the fact that they had one common enemy, and that was the colonial master. And as they focused on one common enemy, unity and the singleness of purpose came as a byproduct. And so when we translate that into our modern situation, when we talk about peace is not something that we can attain by simply talking about it. It's by identifying what common enemy do we have. And those common enemies that we have, maybe to narrow them into one, we would come up with poverty. Poverty, and maybe illiteracy, and all these other issues we are grappling with. So when we focus at those, we will forget about issues like tribalism, what you are coming from this region. It was not there because our forefathers focused on one common enemy, and their interest was to root out the colonial master, and in the process of working together.
The clergy also added their voices on the importance of celebrating Africa Freedom Day.
It's important as Africans to be free and to celebrate, because when we are free, even from the church point of view, our Lord Jesus Christ in John chapter 8, verse 31 to 32 says, when people know the truth sets them free. Now, when we are free, it brings unity, it brings oneness, and we are able to govern ourselves, to rule ourselves. I think from God's perspective, it has always been there that every human being should be free to govern themselves.
Freedom fighters also aired their grievances on the need to uphold peace and unity for the country to develop.
My friend, ngabama problems. Do I need help from my friend, regardless of which party he belongs to? But meanwhile, freedom, it is real. Freedom is real in that we need to know how, first of all, how freedom came about.
Abana na tuesho kuti tubateke panshi. Mwila tumabana nangu mule chitefya my election. Mule tumabana bala mkula hapo samabwe. Tatule fwaya. Ni one Zambia, one nation.
Singing and dancing characterized the event. Sandra reporting for Zanis in Osaka.
And now we take a roundup of stories to mark Africa Freedom Day from other parts of the country. Now, Southern Province Minister Credo Nanjua says over 300,000 households are affected by hunger due to drought. And speaking during the African Freedom Day celebration in Choma, Mr. Nanjua says climate change calls for a paradigm shift from dependency on handouts as demonstrated by people's potential to venture in winter maize growing. We have more in this report.
Southern Province today joined the rest of the country in observing African Freedom Day, whose theme is Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st century, building resilient education systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality, and relevant learning in Africa. The Provincial Minister, Credo Nanjua, led members of the PJOC and the Provincial Permanent Secretary, among others, in a wreath-laying ceremony at the cenotaph. Mr. Nanjua called for innovations in fighting climate change.
So educating Africa, developing Africa's skills, and be resilient, it simply encourages us as people in the province that we really need to be highly innovative. This calls for a paradigm shift as people in Zambia, as people in Southern Province. The dependence on handouts, I think, is something that we need to start drifting away. We create the behavior of hard working among our people so that we can feed the province, we can feed the 1.9 million people here in Southern Province who have been affected.
Chaplain Eric Mutukwa, Assistant Superintendent from the Zambia Police Southern Division, shared the homily.
Challenges such as climate change, challenges such as less productivity, these require us to have skills.
Tutonde helu yando, tutonde helu gamantano, kubule guruana, kubule gusarawurana mushobo, tuli bantu bomwele zangu agatulenga tonse.
Gift Banji, Zanis, in Choma, Southern Province.
And the Cabo Verde Province Minister Elisha Matambo has disclosed that free education has increased the number of children enrolled in schools in the region. Mr. Matambo was speaking in line with this year's African Freedom Day theme after he laid freedom fighters, government officials, among others, in laying of wreaths at the Freedom Park in Dola District. In our Northern Province Permanent Secretary Bernard Mpundu has urged young people in Africa to be patriotic and protect their continent. Mr. Mpundu, who graced the 2024 African Freedom Day commemorations in Kasama, said youths should start realizing that they belong to Africa and should therefore protect and defend it. And now from Northern, we take you to the Central Province, where Kawe residents have joined the rest of the country to commemorate African Freedom Day. And speaking during the celebrations at the Civic Center in Kawe, Provincial Minister Princess Kasone thanked freedom fighters for the role they played in the fight for freedom. Catherine Sakala filed in this report.
Residents of Kabwe have joined the rest of the country to commemorate African Freedom Day under the theme Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st Century, building resilient education systems for increased access to inclusive, long-life, quality and relevant learning in Africa. Central Province Minister Princess Kasuni has thanked women freedom fighters for the role they played in the fight for freedom.
At times, these are the unsung heroes, our women, but women stayed at home and took care of the children. Some of them, they were actually at risk because their husbands were not there to protect them. A lot of women died, but we know that there are a lot of women who were active also in the fighting of freedom, not only in Zambia, but in Africa. And so I just want to honor all the women out there who may not be with us anymore, that we appreciate them. Without their struggle, without their commitment, even people like me couldn't be here today.
And freedom fighters have called on youths to engage in skills training, not reckless drinking of alcohol, if they are to continue upholding the peace and unity. The freedom fighters have also called on government to look into the many challenges they were facing. For Zanis News in Kabwe, I'm Catherine Sakala.
Thank you so much for that report, Catherine Sakala. Now we take a break and more stories on African Freedom Day when we get back.
Zambia Today is a program that keeps you informed on various government policies and programs. Join us every Tuesday at 18 hours on Zanis TV, Topstar Platform, Channel 6 DTT and 458 DTH. Don't miss.
The Issue is a program that looks at topical issues happening in the country. Watch The Issue every Friday at 19:30 hours, only on Zanis TV, Channel 6 DTT and Channel 458 DTH on Topstar. Don't miss.
How I Made It is a program that delves into the many success stories of different people from all walks of life. Watch How I Made It on Zanis TV every Thursday at 18:30 hours on the Topstar channel, Channel 6 DTT and Channel 458 DTH. Woman Thou Art is a program that offers counsel to the female folk, sharing real-life experiences and providing guidance to the women and young girls on necessary steps and conducts that will help shape and nurture a sober society. Watch Woman Thou Art on Zanis TV every Wednesday at 18:30 hours on the Topstar channel, Channel 6 DTT and Channel 458 DTH.
And our Minister of Defense, Ambrose Lufuma, has disclosed that a team of Chinese experts are in the country to carry out pre-feasibility studies for the installation of industrial milling plants. Mr. Lufuma says the People's Republic of China promised Zambia 10 industrial milling plants that will be installed in all the provinces for increased meal production across the country. The minister was speaking in an interview with Zanis during the wreath-laying ceremony at the Freedom Statue in commemoration of African Freedom Day, which falls tomorrow, May 25th. He revealed that the machinery has a 240 metric tons production capacity per day, which should suffice in terms of supply. Mr. Lufuma added that the security measures have been tightened in all borders to ensure that maize and meal smuggling is curtailed.
There has been the presidential initiative for quite some time now. We are being assisted by the People's Republic of China, which promised to give us 10 industrial type milling plants. And so far, I think yesterday or so, yesterday, yeah, a group, some experts came from China to here to do the necessary pre-feasibility, let's say, studies. So it will take a bit of time, but we have started, and we should be able to plant one in each province.
While still in the news, most parts of the country experienced crop failure during the 2023 to 2024 farming season, which has resulted in poor harvests and hunger. And Western Province Permanent Secretary Simomo Akapelwa has flagged off the distribution of relief maize to districts affected by the drought. Prudence Mulenga brings us the details.
In order to cushion the hunger situation in Western Province, about 4,440 metric tons of relief white maize has been set aside for distribution to vulnerable communities. Western Province Permanent Secretary Simomo Akapelwa has since flagged off the distribution exercise in Mongo so that the vulnerable can start receiving the staple commodity.
Our crops have failed. Our rivers have not charged, the lakes have not charged. The grass is already drying. This year is going to be a difficult year. Western Province is 100% affected. I know you know already from the statistics that out of the 116 districts, 84 are affected by the drought to one degree or the other.
The criteria of the distribution are that 20% will be given to the most vulnerable, such as the aged, the physically challenged and the terminally ill, while 80% shall be food for work.
What is important is that the communities we will choose what are the deserving community projects. In there, some of the projects are the clearing of canals, Kutokolamawa, Nimalomba. In there also, they will be building accommodation for teachers. We have recruited so many teachers in these remote places, and in many of them there is no staff accommodation. So Food for Work should also cater for providing accommodation for our young men and women who have joined the teaching profession.
And the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, DMMU, is closely working together with the project implementation partners, PIPs, who are a non-governmental organization and faith-based organizations, to ensure that the relief white maize reaches the intended recipients.
The commitment, as you have seen, is to see to it that no one dies with hunger. As you have seen, we have been working around the clock, making sure that all the processes are done, and that the maize, like today, is being distributed, it's being flagged off as a Western Province, so that each and every province, as you know, that among the 84 districts that were affected, Western Province was also not spared, and then all the districts, the 16 districts in Western Province, are going to be part of this maize.
Zambia experienced a drought in the 2023-2024 farming season, which resulted into the declaration of a national disaster as an emergency by President Hakainde Hichilema in February this year. Prudence Mlinga, Zanis, Mongo.
Well, the Kalulushi district on the Copperbelt province has commenced the distribution of 4,000 by 50 kilogram bags of relief maize to the vulnerable communities. And speaking during the distribution in Sokololo ward in Kalulushi, District Commissioner Kelly Jibinga says the maize will be distributed to all the 24 wards in the district. Mr. Jibinga explains that 80% of the bags will be food for work, while the 20% will be given to the aged, chronically ill and child-herded homes that are vulnerable. He said the hunger problem due to the drought has affected the cost of living, hence the donation by government, adding that the program will continue until the situation stabilizes. Still on relief support, Rumfunsa District Commissioner Richard Mabena has disclosed that government has allocated 374 metric tons of relief maize to the area. Mr. Mabena says the relief food will be distributed to the most vulnerable, who includes the aged and physically challenged in Rumfunsa's Chinyunyu area. We have more in this report.
The government, through the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, DMMU, has commenced distribution of relief maize to vulnerable households in Chinyunyu to mitigate the impact of the drought. Rufunsa District Commissioner Richard Mabena says the government has allocated 374 metric tons of relief maize to the district following the drought that had hit most parts of the country.
We have kickstart issuing out or giving out the maize, the relief maize to the beneficiaries, the elderly, and also the disabled. When we talk about the elderly people, we're talking about the vulnerable citizens within the district. The total number of bags will have almost 374 metric tons of maize allocated to Funsa, and now the 20% of each slot of 600, we give it to the vulnerables and the disabled.
And DMMU officer Kaluwesi Uluta confirmed that the distribution exercise has commenced and is ongoing.
As of today, the beneficiaries that are receiving relief maize are those who are old and infirm. Of course, looking at the criteria, those that are not even on any cash transfer programs or any support from the government, that is 20% from the initial consignments. So for every consignment, 20% is a grant, and of course, moving on, 80% of the relief that will be given is food for work. And priority areas that will be allocated these exercises that will entail that people receive food for work are yet to be shortlisted through the community, satellite committees, the traditional leaders, and other stakeholders. So the 80% food for work is also going to be an ongoing process, which priority areas will be isolated and will engage the locals in exchange for their food for work.
Beneficiaries of the relief maize thanks the government for the gesture.
I want to thank the government for bringing relief food to the communities around the Funza. There are no better ways that we can use to thank the government.
President Hakainde Hichilema has assured the nation that the government is doing everything possible to ensure that no one dies of hunger, despite the drought that had hit most parts of the country in the last farming season. Reporting for Zanis in Rufonsa, I'm Naomi Musala.
Meanwhile, Mwanza-Wambwe District Commissioner Rosemary Mwiche has called on relevant authorities to quickly intervene and ensure that the construction of the Civic Center and District Administration blocks is completed. And speaking in an interview with Zanis in Mwanza-Wambwe, Ms. Mwiche says the two office blocks, once completed, will provide a conducive working environment for the officers who are currently using rented facilities. She stated that the two office blocks were over 80% completed, stating that the delay has resulted in the structures being vandalized. Ms. Mwiche said it is difficult to provide proper supervision to the officers at the moment because they are operating in different locations.
Let these structures be funded and be completed so that all the officers should shift from this village to where they're supposed to operate from. It is very shameful when you look at some of the officers where they are operating from. I'm therefore again trying to beg His Excellency and all relevant authorities that if there are any contracts that have been attached to these structures, can we have them terminated and have these structures completed? We can even use the CDF. We complete our structures so that the officers start operating well.
And now join us on the health segment. The National Malaria Elimination Center has raised concern with the increased malaria cases among expectant mothers in the country in the first quarter of 2024. And NMEC Acting Director Sampao Chono says in the first quarter of 2023, the number of malaria cases in pregnant women was at 33,398 compared to 35,791 cases in the first quarter of 2024. And speaking in an interview with Zanis in Lusaka, Dr. Ochono attributed the increase in malaria cases among pregnant women to late commencement of antenatal care services, which leads to them missing out on antenatal malaria drugs at a stipulated stage. Dr. Ontiono further urged people to avoid self-prescription of drugs whenever they start showing malaria symptoms, but seek medical attention. Now, in Eastern Province, thieves have stolen a submersible pump and control panel at the newly constructed Chimutiku Clinic in Lwangeni constituency in Chipata District. An Eastern Province Deputy Permanent Secretary, Lewis Mwape, has condemned the theft, which occurred at the clinic constructed using the Constituency Development Fund. Here is a report.
Government is adequately working to ensure that developmental projects through the Constituency Development Fund take place in all parts of the country. However, this national developmental agenda has a setback in Lwangeni constituency after thieves stole a solar submersive water pump and a control panel worth 10,000 kwacha at the newly constructed Chimutiku Clinic. Eastern Province Deputy Permanent Secretary Lewis Mwape made a spot check at the clinic.
This place takes care about 4,400 on a head count. And so this is a huge number that benefits from this place. And just one selfish man comes to steal and disadvantage the entire community. I think this is unacceptable. As government, we are going to ensure that we supply necessary security, and our police officers should be again now ensuring that they survey these places to ensure that they are secured and they are always there. So this is that let's ensure that we secure that which we have installed in the communities. If we build a local clinic, let's secure that. Let's be brother's keeper, ensuring that all the installations at the clinic are secured by the same very local communities. Health, neighborhood committees are there in all the clinics, and if they are not there, we want to call on the Minister of Health to ensure that each health facilities as a committee that should be looking at the security of that facility, so that we are in constant provision of health services to the people. For example, this place is about 70 kilometers from Chipata. And if people can be going to Chipata to cover 70 kilometers, that is too much. So we need to ensure that our place are sufficient in terms of drugs, sufficient in terms of health workers, and we from the government side have done all this part. So the community members need now to take care of these facilities so that nothing, either electrification installations or water installations, must be secured by the community members so that we don't disrupt on the provision of health services to our population.
And the traditional leadership in the area has issued a warning to the thieves.
Mbali ya kuno kuchipatala kuchoka 2019 kufika na lero pano sitinapeze mavuto vena wali wonse kumbuyo konse huko. So chokunyiririsha mawiki amene yapita pambuyo yapa mpamene tinaona kuti pano bantu bamba kuti bera bantu. So kumbali ya seo tenkala okunyirira kuti chitukuko techiyambani kale 2019 kufika na lero 2024 sinakumane na mavuto ya pano pa kliniki. Ndiye kwa hicho chenkala choti kunyiririsha ndiye madera yasu yano yonse ngati chifidomo yaba bamaguya ni wokunyirira. Koma ripoti tinapereka kwa nkosi maguya kwa masauro ku polisi. Koma tikaunguza ititolera katundu wapano oita notisowa. Ngati wakuno kuminzi yasu tupempa kuti ana rusonswei arekeje chifuka uko katiwa saza tuluka azasenzera boma pomwe wake onse. Ngati niwochoka madera ya matauni tupempa kuti akuna arekeje.
Sylvester Chimba for Zanis in Chipata District, Eastern Province.
Thank you so much for that report. Now, as we end the news tonight, filmmakers in Siavonga district have appealed for more support from government and other stakeholders in the arts sector to help the local industries thrive. And Joseph Hakulu, a film director, says that the film industry in the district has the potential to create opportunities for young people, but financial challenges are limiting the industry from thriving. Let us take a look at this report.
Filmmaking industry is steadily gaining momentum in the country. In Siavonga district, a local film producer, Coco Films, has flexed its muscle to tap into the entertainment space with its latest local movie titled Rivers Whisper. Rivers Whisper is a 2024 production directed by Joseph Hagulu.
Nestled 5 and the Tonga people thrived.
I've directed a lot of movies so far from Siavonga, and I've been working with some other productions from Lusaka, just trying to sharpen my skills on how to go about film. It is, I might say, a good idea for coming up with an initiative of telling stories through film. We'll be talking about our culture and our history.
Rivers Whisper is a production based on a life experience story of the people in Siavonga before and during the construction of the man-made lake Kariba Dam. Mr. Hagulu shares some of the challenges filmmakers are facing to grow the local industry.
We are, as I said, we are urging for the government to really help us, to manage, producing good films in Siavonga, telling our stories.
Siavonga Town Council Chairperson Given Kwap has called on Siavonga residents to support the local movie.
I wish to welcome everyone to the launch of one of the local film known as River Whisper. It's locally done within Siavonga here. So I encourage each and everyone to come and support this nice and well-tailored film.
Mkwengu Shepande reporting in Siavonga District, Southern Province.
Well, thank you for that report, and that brings us to the end of the news. We look at the top stories once again. Zambia celebrates Africa Freedom Day. 10 industrial milling plants are to be installed in Zambia. Mwansavombwe DC calls for completion of Civic Center. Plus, filmmakers appeal for support. Well, that is all we had for you, and on behalf of the entire news production crew here at Zanis, thank you so much for being with us. It has been Margaret Kangwa, and my sign language interpreter has been Jas Shikomboy. Stay tuned.